Kelvin Newman, hello.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, thank you so much for coming up to Guildford for a coffee and a chat.
Yeah, no, very excited to have a little chat about things.
Out the shed, in the shed at the end of the garden. We should probably, I feel like we should set the scene. We're in my wife's jewellery studio at the end of the garden, surrounded by hammers and drills and...
All very impressive, yeah.
There's a blowtorch here in case it gets a little bit...
a little bit dangerous, potentially.
Exactly. So, yeah, just before we start, like, if anyone's joining this podcast, listening in for the first time, thank you so much. Hope you enjoy it. If you do, please subscribe. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and do come and check us out at overdrivedigital.co.uk. And that is the promotional bit done. So, Kelvin, I'm so interested to have this chat because I really do think that the story of Brighton SEO is probably one of the most interesting stories in the digital marketing space. So really kind of keen to get settled into that and have a chat around it. But I've got some numbers here. So.
Yeah.
I hate to use the word epic, but it is kind of epic. And, 9 years ago, 20 odd people in a room above a pub, a meetup. Mm-hmm. Now, 4,000 people twice a year. It's the largest search event in the world. Like, did you have any inkling of the fact that would happen when you organised that first meetup?
Not that very first one, no. It was very much just an informal thing, really. So we tell the story, and it's true that the event had a hashtag before it had a website, and that was kind of all it really was, that there was this hashtag Brighton SEO that me and a variety of other people who lived in Brighton and worked in SEO used to kind of have a chat occasionally. And a few people had organised some informal, just pub meetups, like even less of a meetup than that original one was, where it was just kind of, let's all go down the pub and have a chat. And it would be kind of like everyone would know everyone in the room. And I kind of took over the mantle and went, okay, well, if we put a projector screen up in this room in a pub, we can go down to the pub at lunchtime rather than wait until after work. So that was entirely that original logic, which was to get a few people together. And, I've always been ambitious and we've always been keen to sort of, each time we do an event, try and make it a bit bigger the next time round. But yeah, it was never intended to be a big event. It was never intended to be my job. It was never intended to be kind of an event at the scale at which it's become. But each step along the way, over those sort of 9 years that we've been doing it, each time it just felt like a very natural, well, let's just do it a little bit more next time round. And if you're kind of going into it with that attitude of just doing it a little bit bigger and a little bit better, each time you do something, it's amazing how quickly that can kind of snowball and cascade into something quite large.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think the first event that I went to it must have been, 2011. It was at the university.
Okay, yep.
And there was, 300-400?
Yeah, I think
people?
It's 250, 280 that seats in there. So yeah, that would have been the third one. The first one that was kind of, was that a full day? That might have only been a half day, that one. Yeah. Feels a very long time ago.
It does. But at that point, it was an event. It was a conference. So in between that first meetup and that point, like when did it feel like, okay, hang on a minute, this is more than a meetup?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that first one where we had a stage, I know that sounds really silly, but like a lot of these like early meetups and small scale events you do, it's a kind of a screen in a corner of, and not even people being amplified. So I think that was the first one we used where people were mic'd up, which I know sounds completely ridiculous, but in a strange way, as soon as you're kind of putting people's voices through an amplifier, that suddenly makes it a little bit more serious. So yeah, I think that was the first one that we did, and that was probably the first one where we had proper levels of sponsorship. Not that, we had a couple of companies, people like LinkDex and Fresh Egg, and that who kind of gave us, I think, 250 quid each or something like that.
Right.
That paid for the bar and the venue hire. So yeah, that was kind of the first point at which it's like, okay, maybe there's a demand for a conference or event. And I think that one was also during September, which had just started to be the Brighton Digital Festival, which was kind of and is a month-long series of events. So that pushed us into doing an event in September and kind of gave us that nudge to take it a little bit more seriously. And again, And that was probably the first one we ticketed as well. So therefore, when tickets went in a couple of hours or a couple of days, they would have been for that first one. That was kind of an indication that people want to come and learn about search. And we knew that because there's events like SMX and SES have been going for years and years and years. But it kind of showed that there was, scope to do something a little bit different to that.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, because the conference scene, if you like, in the UK at that point was dramatically different to what it is now. So you had, if you wanted to go and learn at a conference, you would have to pay, I don't know, £1,000 for a ticket for a 2-day event. And, now it's very different, right? I remember you guys coming along and it was like, no, hang on a minute, I can go and see the same level, same quality, and I don't have to pay, right? So how obviously Brighton SEO, I think, has been quite disruptive to the space in a very good way for that reason. Like, is that something you think about, or is it just...
It's certainly part of the intention, yeah. I mean, it wasn't the reason when we were very first starting out, but certainly has been part of the journey along the way, was that I was very fortunate that I haven't been working in search for as long as lots of people have. It's a decent amount of time now, but very early on in my career, I was very fortunate to be invited by Chris Sherman at SMX to speak at the first SMX London that happened, which I think was 2007. And I hadn't really been doing search a huge amount of time. I was speaking on a panel about social media, and there was 4 of us on that panel. So myself, Lisa Myers, and also I think Dixon Jones was on that panel, and someone else I've completely forgotten in the midst of time. And so we're very fortunate early on to get granted this opportunity to speak at an event, and I really, really enjoyed that. I think I spoke at the next one the following year, and then had a bit of a sort of dry spell where I couldn't get a speaking slot for Love Nor Money. So that was a little bit of the part of the motivation that led me to start to take Brighton SEO a little bit more seriously. Was, well, here's these events. I think they do lots really, really well, but yeah, there's, as a speaker, what the person's paying for the ticket doesn't really have a huge knock through for the person who's doing the talk, right? So they still put the same amount of, love and effort and thought into a talk, whether it's, a big event that someone's paid, $2,500 for a ticket for, or a meet-up where someone's just kind of come along because they get free beer. So the effort for the speaker isn't dramatically different in those kind of scenarios. So I think that kind of insight that, you could have people who were speaking at events that might cost thousands of pounds to attend at a free or low cost event was, definitely a big part of what helped us grow and continues to, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's a really good thing, and on that point of speakers, how many speakers do you have now? It's in the hundreds, isn't it?
Once you include the kind of fringe events that we do, I think we probably went over 100 for the first time this time around. So we've got, in the main conference, there's 6 or 7 tracks with 12 speakers per track. So it does add up.
So obviously the size facilitates, facilitates choice in terms of speakers. But do you think the model in terms of is free, or is freemium really, isn't it? But does that free you up to take bigger risks with new speakers? Because that, I think, is one of the greatest things about Brighton SEO is you could go and see a big name speaker, but you can also see someone who's right in the trenches. They've never done a presentation before, and it's kind of real day-to-day information.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a real difference in, and this is again something that kind of I've come to appreciate over time, is that the business model of a business has quite a big impact on how they go about conducting their business, which sounds really, really obvious when you say it like that. But to me, I'd never really thought of that in the context of events and exhibitions and, conferences. And, at the moment we're in the midst of, as we record this, we're in, literally have just closed the ballot that we hold for free tickets. And we've got, lots and lots of people who have applied to get a free ticket to the conference. And I know for a fact, because I've got the web analytics, that we've had a lot, 9,000 people apply for those tickets, but we have not had 9,000 unique views on the lineup of the speakers, right? I know that's not the case. Now, that doesn't mean that the people who are attending our event don't care about that, because they do, and they will look at that. But for us, we're quite fortunate that we've established, and the model allows us that people book the ticket first and worry about the lineup later.
Yep.
Which I think is quite different from lots of other events. So, it's a completely different world. But like, I think, in the way Glastonbury operates in a similar way, that you buy a Glastonbury ticket, then you find out who's speaking at Glastonbury after. And that's really fortunate for us, that allows us to have a very different motivating factor in selecting our speakers.
What is so I know after each event, normally there's a tweet or an email which links out to a form where people can pitch for a session.
Yeah.
What's the process? So what are you looking for? Like, is there anything you're trying to avoid? Like, how do you... Because with 100 odd speakers, A, that's a big task, but B, you obviously you want to keep the integrity of the event. Like, how does that process work for you?
Yeah, so we don't have a formal pitch process, which is true. So there is this web form, and it's up all year round. And whenever anyone submits an idea to that, I'm looking at it as it pops up. And after each event, I will do a process where I will go through that list, and it varies from event to event. So this time round, I did let's exclude those that I'm not interested in, first of all. And then kind of went through that process. Now, as you were talking about before, because unlike perhaps some other events where they have to pre-announce their lineup and the names and the topics of the speakers are having a really big impact on whether people book tickets or not, we do it in a slightly different way. So we don't... It's a Google form, it populates a Google sheet, and all I do is I load up on my screen and go through, expand the column width for the talk title idea and the description that people have got, and go through them and kind of go yes, no, maybe, really, as the process that I go through there. And then so I'll do that and immediately kind of discount maybe 50% of the talks, because either they're topics we've covered in loads of detail before, or they're just really bad pitch ideas. And usually that'll be stuff like people we ask them, so tell us what you'd like to speak about, and they'll just put like SEO or maybe a bit like they'll go, oh, it's local, and that's cool, but like that doesn't really tell me what you're gonna talk about in any real detail. So we tend to prefer those that are detailed talk ideas. And then once we've done that and we've kind of discounted a load straight off the bat, we then start to go, okay, so who are these people who have pitched the ideas? Are they someone who we've had speak a lot in the past? That might count a little bit against them. Are they someone new? Are they from an agency we've not heard from before? Are they brand side? Do they reflect the diversity of the audience that we have as well? And then try and do a bit of a prioritisation off the back of that. And then usually we still end up with loads more than we've got space for. So we try and do some kind of prioritisation and ask the people in an order, because not everybody who pitches who we choose subsequently goes on to speak. Often there'll be either people who then go and look in their diary and find they can't do it, or have changed jobs, so don't have the freedom of time to do it that they might have done before. Yeah,
so it's quite an extended process, and that kicks off right after the event prior to the one you're doing your selection for.
So this time round we've done it a bit different, but in the past often I normally shortlist and end up with more than we have spaces for, so I already am programming the next event. So there'll be people I can go, I know you pitched for September, but can you speak in April instead? And so it goes over time there, and just does it in kind of, okay, I'll give myself 3 or 4 hours to look through and build it up until I run out of slots, really.
And you also do the speaker training for new speakers, right? So, which I think is a really nice thing.
Yeah.
And what was the motivation behind that? Is it to help, like, really encourage new speakers? Is it to make sure the quality of the event is good, or is it a combination of both? Because it's not every event does that.
No. So I mean, I was really lucky. An event that I'm a big fan of. It's the Search Love series of events that are organised by Distilled, so Boston, San Diego and London, and I did the London one probably 7 years ago, something like that, and they had kind of a speaker call where they get one of their consultants, I think it might have been Paddy Moogan or maybe Hannah Smith, and they kind of would book in a 35-minute, 45-minute phone call and talk you through your topic and give you views on how you can improve that. And I found that incredibly useful, and it acted as kind of a motivator to do that. So we had that process, and we still do, and we have Stacey McNaught, does those for us now. But that was really helpful, that kind of process of actually thinking about the topic that you did. So being a speaker, I kind of really enjoyed that, helping me do a better job. And lots of events, not just in the search industry, but all the ones I do, very often it's amazing how light touch the involvement people have with speakers is.
Yeah.
So you'll pitch your idea, they'll say that's fantastic, then they'll maybe ask to see your slides a week beforehand, and there's like no conversation that goes on in between that period of time. So we've done it I think 4 times now where we do speaker training. So we offer all of the people who have pitched and been accepted to speak at the event the opportunity to have a day-long training session to help them become a better speaker. And the reasons for that are, various. So it definitely helps us that we see the people who have been through that speaker training definitely deliver better talks than the people who don't.
Okay.
And some of that is the training itself. I think a lot of it is actually, is it kind of correlation causation? So if you're the kind of person who puts yourself forward to get trained in speaking, you probably want to do a better job, so therefore you tend to do a better job.
It's got to be a great confidence boost as well for a new speaker to kind of have that, and also be in a room full of new speakers as well. Like coming out at the end of that with some training, and I imagine a good boost to the confidence as well.
I think that stepping away and realising that you're not the only person who's nervous about it is really powerful. So if you're inviting people to speak who might not have done many events before, or if they haven't done them at a large scale before, having people are going to be nervous, and that's not a problem, right? Because that actually means that they care. I'm much happier if we have a speaker who's nervous and worried about it. I don't want them to be unnecessarily worried.
Yeah.
But the people who don't care and are just kind of phoning it in, they're the dangerous ones to have in your lineup.
That makes a lot of sense. So I guess on a similar topic to speaker selection and prep on that side, you've got 2 annual events, which gives you a 6-month run up to each event. Like, what does that launch plan or marketing plan look like? Because you do some, I've seen everything from you guys, ranging from kind of your retargeting on Facebook through to plastering your banners over the train station in Brighton. You've obviously got a load of ideas, but how does that marketing launch plan look in the run up?
I think it's surprising that for a business that is ostensibly very knowledgeable on SEO, hopefully. We don't do a lot of that, right? So we don't get a lot of our bookings or traffic, particularly for the conference, but also for the training. We don't really get a lot from natural search. So, there's 3 main channels that we use to sort of drive the business. So there's email, not sexy, but incredibly powerful. There's social media, and by that I mean Twitter. And mostly that is to engage our existing audience in making them feel ownership. So we do a lot where we'll ask questions about things we could do, and that's for 2 reasons. One is it gives us an answer to the questions that we've got, but it also allows everyone who replies to that to feel ownership of the event, which is good because it's a community. And then, as you say, retargeting, which is a bit newer for us, but particularly for the training is really, really powerful, because like every business really, but any kind of B2B considered purchase, the time that someone will look at your website and they're probably not going to transact then and then. So for us, that kind of the retargeting is all about kind of moving people along that journey. So who has been to our website, discovered one of our training courses, probably via social media or via email, looked at the description of what that course is going to cover, and then not booked. And usually it's not because they're not going to, it's because they've not got round to it, or their boss with the company car was at the office, or whatever those kind of real reasons are. And retargeting is incredibly, the way I see that is all about convincing those people who probably want to come to actually book.
Got you.
And that works really, really well. And I think that's, kind of classic retargeting, isn't it? Where you're taking people who, from a consideration phase into an action phase.
And are you, just to dive into a tactic here, are you running kind of email lists as retargeting? Are you doing website pixel retargeting?
It's mostly pixel retargeting rather than email. partially just because that's easier. It's
Yep.
been easier. My justification for why I'm being lazy would be that typically the email address that we have is a business email address, and the social media profiles would probably be a personal email address. So that gives
Totally
me
makes sense.
bit of a justification on that side of things. But yeah, it's mostly we're using AdWords retargeting, and then using display ads with that, and dynamic ads off the back of that, which tend to be seem to work quite well. But yeah, we're not. It's funny actually. I'm sure probably the people who work in agencies will recognise this as well. Is that having been and worked in an agency and worked with clients, the kind of rigmarole and precision you'd have in your reporting, we don't do in our own marketing, right? So we're kind of hopefully going like, okay, well, we know that if they've been to the website and they've looked at a training page, they're probably going to want to see an advert, and if we we have a sense of what's a kind of a sensible budget we should be spending on that, and working back from that, rather than being, well, we know our cost per acquisition is this, so therefore we can afford to spend this, and which is terrible, right? Because you know that you ought to be doing that, but it's kind of cobbler's shoes type.
If it works, it works.
Yeah. It's like, I'm sure we could be a lot more precise in what we're doing.
So when does the marketing really kick in? So you've got a 6-month run up. The ballot opens. What is it, like 3-4 months beforehand?
Yeah.
So, like, when's the peak in terms of marketing activity for you?
Well, bizarrely, it's actually during the preceding event. So this is, again, as I've started to build up the team, and I've tried to say to them that, like, the point at which the success of the next event is going to be determined is the previous one.
Yep.
So we're spending effort and time and attention in what we really want is, during our autumn event, we want people who aren't at the event to be feeling like they're missing out, and we want the people who are at the event to have a really good time, so they want to come back. And so that's a lot of where the motivation for someone to decide that they're going to make a purchase occurs. And then the stuff that happens after that is all about kind of persuading the people who probably want to do it to actually do it. So I'm sure that's similar to other businesses as well, where kind of the decisions made early, but the actual like handing over the credit card details or the making of a booking happens potentially months later. So yeah, that's kind of the big opportunity is around the event itself, which is a nightmare because we're so busy running it. But a lot of the decisions we're making in putting on the event are kind of with a view of, well, if someone's there, are they going to share that on social media? Like we do the things like we have the props in our big stage, like we had the Game of Thrones ones, we've had the camper van and stuff like that, and they're obviously really cool for the event itself and make it look great, but actually part of the motivation for that is kind of going, well, how do we take someone who's attending the event, make them take a photo and share that on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so their mates who aren't there discover the event, or remind themselves that it's occurring and they missed out.
Amazing. And yeah, you've had some pretty cool things like the DeLorean. I'm still waiting for like a super bike or something.
Yeah,
you've had a Vespa, haven't you?
Yeah. So well, it's not technically a Vespa. If you want to get into the kind of it's an LML, which is an Indian manufactured version of a PX Vespa scooter from the late 80s. And when Vespa closed down the factory that made them, a firm out there bought the factory and the molds and the machining and all of that sort of stuff, and continued to make them. But they're I know you're interested in bikes. They're kind of a really
let's go off the rails.
Yeah, a really fascinating kind of piece of. So it's like a 1980s designed frame and bike with sort of late 90s engine and machinery.
Wow.
Manufactured and released in like the 2000s. So it's a really weird, looks old, is kind of modern in some ways, but actually doesn't work because it's not designed for the parts that are in there. But yeah, so we've had that.
Looks good at the side of the stage though.
Yeah, so yeah, these ideas of things that people would take photos of. So yeah, we've had that. We've got a Sinclair C5. In the main stage we had for a couple of years, we had a camper van, a VW 1971 bay windowed camper van. We've had the DeLorean. We've last time around had the Game of Thrones throne because it was like the Friday that the new series kicked off on the Monday. We've got a good one lined up this time round. I really want to get the Ecto one from Ghostbusters.
Oh my goodness!
And we've looked into it, but the issue is that it's so long that it has to kind of, so like all the other ones, there's like an entry ramp that you can kind of do a 25-point turn and get pretty much any vehicle on. But the Ecto one is, because it's so long, needs to go in on a like flatbed truck. Which is fine, but like it needs to be a really long flatbed truck, so it's going to cost more to transport it than it was to hire it. And,
I love the fact that there's a very practical reason why this crazy idea won't work.
That's what I spend my time on, is worrying about how do I get a thing through a door, mostly.
Amazing. And you do like to do things differently and try lots of stuff. So as well as the event, there's just from last time, there was like the beach cleanup, there's a run in the morning. You offer childcare. Yeah,
that was a new one, yeah. I mean, we're fortunate as the event's reached a certain kind of scale that we've got money to spend on things. And I think lots of the obvious solution would either be you just bank more, or you spend it on, additional, better food at the event, or 2 drinks vouchers rather than 1, and all that kind of thing. And yeah, that definitely helps, and it's enjoyable for the event. But we've kind of, there's 2 parts to it. One is that we want to make it as welcoming as possible, because the people that, are most appreciative of things like childcare actually tend to be the people who are biggest fans, biggest advocates, and, want to come back, and are amazing people to have as supporters of the events. But we've also had over the last year or so, a bit of a realisation that, the event started out as in the upstairs room of a pub. The pre-party, the after-party are a big part of why people come. It's a bit boozy. And like for a lot of people, that's absolutely cool and they love that. But for other people, it's like, that's not entirely, what I'm interested in. So, we've made a conscious effort to try and go, well, how can we have networking and, fringe events that are interesting and useful but don't rely on people drinking. The beach clean was part of that. We did yoga in the I-360.
That looked amazing.
The run is like an informal one that one of our attendees books, but we're kind of quite supportive of. And so that's kind of the logic there, which is how do you make people have a slightly more memorable experience of a conference rather than turning up, sitting in a room all day and then going home?
I think it's great. And I think stuff like that retains that... It's kind of kept the soul of the event in that it's, it's friendly, it's welcoming, it's a great place to catch up. And I think, things like that have, in my mind anyway, just as an attendee, have retained that vibe.
Yeah, it's classic kind of marketing stuff though, isn't it? So there's obviously the core product, and you need to get that right. And if all of our speakers were terrible, and that all the AV went wrong and all of that kind of thing, it wouldn't matter what the bells and whistles are around that. But as there are ever more specialist SEO events and general marketing events and webinars and books and all of these kind of things you could use to learn about SEO, the greater the need is to kind of go, well, what's extra and special? And in some cases, other events, they go all in on speaker quality, and I definitely get how that would be the case. We've gone, well, we're going to try and make our speakers as good as we possibly can. We're going to work with the most interesting people, but we think there's a bit of an opportunity to stand out by kind of this broader, well, what makes the event more useful? And we're fortunate that people are making a journey down to Brighton. It's a lovely place in the world for people to come to. So we've got a lot of things in our favour. And I think with any kind of business where you're trying to go, well, what's the differentiators or what's the things that make you special, leaning into either what is innate about what you're doing, in our case that's the friendliness, the seaside kind of atmosphere, is definitely a sensible place to put your attention.
I think it works.
Definitely. That's good. It's good to know.
As an outsider, it definitely works. And the so we've been talking about all the positives. Have you ever had? It can't have all been plain sailing over the 9 years. Have there been any particularly stressful or like difficult events, or like what's been a low?
They reckon that, and I don't know how true this is that like event planning is one of the top 10 most stressful jobs in the world, and I don't know how true that is. And I'm very fortunate that the rest of my year is quite relaxed, so there's definitely a benefit there. But it is very strange, and I talk to like lots of my friends run agencies or work in agencies, And it's very different to an agency where you're under continual pressure. Like, I think is the nature of it. Like, every 6 weeks you'll have a client review to have to extend the contract. You'll have a monthly meeting that you've got to deliver the results on. Whereas running events is different to that, in as much as I have like a year of my work is evaluated over like 7 days in a year, maybe 8. So having 6 months worth of work leading into 3 days where essentially all of your revenue's delivered, all of your feedback is gained, all of your success and failure is kind of, happens. That's stressful and a tricky sort of challenge to deal with. I think lots of events have that kind of situation. But yeah, that's definitely one of the hardest bits about it, is this, constant fear that it could all go wrong in that short period of time. And you're making all of the prep and all of the kind of planning that you can do to have it lined up well. But something can go wrong. And where we've had unforeseen circumstances, that's usually where that period comes from. And it's a big elation, so kind of coming off afterwards, that's there can sometimes be a bit of a downer of like, so what next?
Do you do anything after the event to just chill out, get off the grid?
Yeah, I mean, I've tried in the past to have I don't necessarily have like holidays or stuff like that, but I try and really reduce the number of hours that I'm working for a couple of weeks. I mountain bike. I'm bad at it, but I often kind of so I had a day of coaching booked in after the last one, and we did a SEO industry trip to Wales as well that we booked in. So nice. Stuff like that's kind of good, and that is again, I think, an advantage to like a project event based business rather than an agency retainer is that there is a sort of a bit of an end point, so you can kind of step back and evaluate. I liked this about it, but I didn't like that, so I'm going to do this different, which is, I think, really tricky when you're in the midst of, okay, we've got another set of monthly reports to turn out today. We've got, next week we've got a client review with this one. So, yeah, but it's not all been plain sailing, but we're fortunate that we've got a lot of, a supportive audience, which helps a lot.
And a brilliant team around you.
Yeah. I mean, again, that's a slightly different way we do things to other organisations. So we've got a distributed, remote, part-time, and mostly and contractors as well. So that's allowed us to do all kinds of things that are different. So we don't have an office. We don't have set hours that we work. Most of the team, either we're like their main gig or second biggest gig, but like we're not the only thing they're working on. And that's good because we benefit from the knowledge that they're bringing of all the other projects that they bring in and work on. And they're incredibly self-motivated and deliver great results. So I'm back in the day when I was kind of in a more conventional agency environment, I was a terrible manager, like really, really bad. And I don't know if that's because I lack empathy or what it is, but certainly there's a huge skill to being a good people manager, and I respect that hugely, but I don't have that skill set. So and this was trial and error, and we had some error along the way of doing this, that we've ended up with working with freelancers. Okay. But they're freelancers who we've worked with for 7 or 8 years. So they're a key core part of the team. But the relationship we have them is that it means that they are very self-sufficient and organised, and
I guess like really clearly defined roles within the event as well.
I'd hope so, yeah. Whether they have the same version, but yeah, certainly there's a view that like this person is doing this thing for us, and we're and also again when you get kind of into culturally around businesses, we're very task orientated organisation. So we use Asana as our project management system.
Love it.
And we're kind of very much around, okay, here's a thing that a person's got to do by a certain point in time, and once that's in that case, I believe and trust that they're going to do that, and they always do. So that's which is good, but it does have some challenges as well. There's less of a, well, okay, I've got nothing to do this afternoon, what should I do? That we sometimes miss that bit in our business, but the team do a great job of making sure that everything we plan to do for the event happens. And if you get that right, it's amazing how like doing the things you plan to do and making sure they happen. If you get that right, I think, generally businesses tend to run quite well.
Well, it's clearly working, I think, from, again,
I hope so.
outside looking in. So to wrap up, most podcasts ask a question. The question that I have is, let's say I gave you a check for £1,000 to spend on a marketing activity for the next event. What would you do? How would you spend it?
I think email is criminally underrated in all areas of business because it isn't expensive. I mean, I think in that, the reality is that you could have a free or low cost MailChimp or whatever kind of thing, and then spend the money on the time and effort of producing the content to do that. And most businesses don't send enough email, and the email they send is nothing key, right? So it's got nothing to it. And so having a tone of voice or having a personality in your communications is really powerful, and people get really good at that and care about that a lot in social media, and then just ignore it in email. So I definitely think that's the case, and it doesn't need to be about the design. It's if you've got a mailing list of a number of people and you've got the opportunity to send them something that hopefully entertains them, educates them, and persuades them to do something with you as a business, is so powerful. And the balancing is so often, and we make this mistake as well, that you're doing something on Twitter or Facebook where, best case scenario, a single digit percentage of your audience is going to see it. Now, if you're sending an email and you get like 5% open rate, you've done a really bad job. But, your Facebook updates aren't going to be getting that kind of
That's such a good point.
ratio. And
such a good point.
So, and particularly if they have been customers or they've downloaded a white paper or they've had some kind of interaction with you as a business before, email is so powerful and criminally underrated.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point. And thanks so much for coming in and making the time to have this chat. And just quickly, though, where can people go for more information? It's brightonseo.com.
Yes, that's the main place people do it. Of course, sign up for the email list, as you kind of alluded to there. But that's the main point, to find out what's coming up next and what we're doing.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Cheers.